Welcome to the Weather Insights Podcast. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney along with meteorologist Jeff Lindner. Hello, Jeff.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great, sir. Thank you for asking. So this is the first tropical update. This is June 7th, and Jeff, we're a week into hurricane season already. And I like what I'm seeing from the National Hurricane Center. No development in the next 7 days. It'd be nice to see that throughout the year, but I don't think we will. As we know, this is anticipated to be an active hurricane season. And we're talking about some changes potentially already next week. We have ridging in place right now. That's about 850 millibars, is about halfway down into the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the jet. In fact, a front came through Florida. And that is going to be retreating back off to the north and to the east. And as it does, we're going to see moisture start to influx into the Gulf next week. And we also have a broad area of low pressure over Central America, which is pretty common for this time of year. But if any of that low pressure interacts with that moisture, we could potentially see some spin up. Personally, I think that there's a better chance for that the week after next, after this change has more time to develop. But, it is definitely something to keep an eye on for next week. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so just looking at the satellite pictures, a couple things. Yes, it's June, and we can still see there's some westerly flow or wind shear across the Gulf of Mexico and even the Western Caribbean, and so we're not quite there yet. This is pretty common in June to still have the wind shear be generally unfavorable for tropical development. This is why we don't get a lot of tropical storms and hurricanes in June. But as you mentioned, there are changes coming. A couple of them actually. One is a decent looking front that may get down in here early next week and potentially even get out in the Gulf of Mexico and could actually bring us some decently nice weather for June. Anytime you get a front in the Gulf of Mexico this time of year, you always want to keep an eye on it. A front is a trough, if you will, of low pressure. So you put the low pressure down over the warm waters with thunderstorms and stuff like that. And it's just something to keep an eye on. Not saying anything will develop along that, but it could also help to pool and enhance that moisture you were talking about coming up from the Western Caribbean. And I know if you've been looking at social media, it's already started. The hoopla and all the chaos has begun with all the folks out there posting all the deterministic model stuff. And so I wanted to go into some of the models a little bit. I typically don't do this a whole lot, but kind of explain what is being shown and what people are seeing and really kind of what we're thinking about this. And so this is the GFS ensemble. So this is multiple runs of the GFS model with a little bit of a tweak at the start. And so you may have a little bit of a different pressure here, a little bit different wind here. And so there's just slight tweaks in each one of these 50 or so clusters that run. And then they just go, the model runs and you see what happens. And as you can see, what we're seeing is a lot of colors on here, but we're kind of looking at this orangish area between Florida and the Yucatan. And notice the first thing, it's a fairly large area. The first thing that tells you on an ensemble plot is that there's a lot of uncertainty. So potentially any sort of low pressure that may develop could really develop anywhere in that area. And so there's a lot of uncertainty on the potential location of this, even back into the Bay of Campeche. So you're talking 1,000 miles or so of where something could potentially develop. And this is June 20th. So this is Thursday, June 20th, about 2 weeks from now. And the first thing I'll say is, we say it all the time, you really shouldn't believe anything after about 7 days. So this is well beyond our 7-day period. But the reason we look at the ensembles versus the next two things I'm going to show you is because it is multiple runs. And so we are seeing at least a signal down in this area that something may try to develop, at least low pressure may try to get going. This is the deterministic GFS. So this is run one time every 6 hours. And this is valid for noon-ish, noon 1 o'clock on Monday, June 17th. So remember that what I just showed you was Thursday, June 20th. This is Monday, June 17th, still over about a week away. But notice it is showing a little bit of low pressure here off the Louisiana coast. Now, this is completely different than what that ensemble plot was showing, with possibly some low pressure centers developing down here between Florida and the Yucatan. So the first thing that this raises a red flag is we're not seeing a lot of consistency, even amongst the deterministic model and what its ensembles are showing. And then when you look between the different models, for example, the European, this is the deterministic run. This is for Sunday evening, June 16th. It says the 17th run Zulu time in these models. And so this would be close to the time where the GFS had a tropical system off the coast of Louisiana. This model, the European, shows some moisture, but no indication of a closed surface low anywhere near the central and northwest Gulf of Mexico. And so we do not have much of any consistency or agreement among the models. And even the ensembles are pretty disagreeing right now. And one of the things we have to be careful about with this type of setup, like you mentioned, we get this kind of low pressure, what we call the Central American gyre. This is just kind of a trough of low pressure over Central America, the Yucatan. And a lot of times the GFS and a lot of what you've seen on social media is the GFS output is biased to development in this area from this type of a setup. And typically what you see is it's always out about 10 to 14 days, and it never really moves up in time. So as we get closer to when the model keeps saying it's going to happen, the model keeps shifting it back. And that's a classic bias of the GFS model in this area. And so, yes, something could form down there. Most of our June activity, if we're going to get something, sort of comes from something like this. So yeah, there is some potential. I put it on the really low side, and then just depending on where, as you saw with the ensemble stuff there, you could have something develop off the east coast of Florida all the way down to Central America to the Bay of Campeche. Well, where it's going to go is completely different depending on where exactly any sort of center of low pressure may try to form in this big overall area of lower pressure. And so right now, I'd say the uncertainty is really low. I wouldn't, cancel any plans or anything based on what is being said on some social media websites and stuff like that. And this is probably just a good reminder up front this season. Just be careful with this stuff. You're going to see a lot of this season. With an active tropics, you're going to see a lot of scary stuff. And if it's 10, 14 days out, I wouldn't even pay attention to it. But this is kind of what we're seeing. Yeah, there is a little bit of a signal down there. So, something to keep an eye on. But I personally wouldn't worry about it right now.
Yeah, as we know too, models do a lot better when there's an actual closed low in the tropics, and we're just not seeing that. So it's all speculation. And the best thing to do is just check the weather daily, and then we'll keep these podcasts going too on a weekly basis to give you an overview and to keep you prepared all throughout the hurricane season. So check out the link. We'll have that in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, not just to get our tropical updates, but to see all the Weather Insights podcast. And we'll see you all on the next podcast. Jeff, thanks a bunch. Have a good one.
You too.